Hi friends, my name is Mr. Sherman and I teach history at Groves High School. The classes that I normally teach are AP Modern European History, I teach 9th grade Excel, I teach government, as well as U.S. history. I also coach cross-country, women's cross-country, and track and field. This is kind of an unprecedented time for all of us, and what we've decided as a district to do is provide some supplemental materials for you guys. This isn't anything that's going to be graded. This is only going to help stimulate you intellectually and hopefully keep your brain synapses firing while we're on this extended and obviously very necessary break. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about why a nation would allow itself to have a dictatorship. Why would a nation allow itself to elect, appoint, or just allow to exist a totalitarian type of a leader? And that's what we're talking about. And the reason we're talking about it is when we get back to school, that's what we're moving into. We're moving into the beginnings of World War II. And so it's important to know the motivations behind totalitarian rulers and why people will allow them to come to power in the first place. And so one of the things that I want to do, readers, is I want to tell you a little bit about what totalitarianism is. It's a system of government that's centralized and dictatorial, and usually they require complete subservience to the state. Now that's a book definition. But the most important thing to know about totalitarians is it doesn't matter how they get power, they take away the rights of others. And you as an individual lose your power because the state is much more important. And that's huge. All right. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about, we're going to be talking about areas outside of the United States, just out of necessity. But we're going to talk about the rise of fascism in Italy under Mussolini. We're going to talk about the rise of totalitarianism in Japan under Hideki Tojo. We're going to talk about the rise of Hitler in Germany. And we'll talk a little bit about the rise of Stalin in the Soviet Union. Interestingly enough, one of those guys, Stalin, was our ally during World War II. So for a short amount of time, one of the totalitarian dictators was our ally. All right, so let's talk a little bit about why a group of people who are educated, intelligent, they have rights and things like that, why would they allow something like this to happen? For instance, in Germany, Germany was extremely educated. They had a high literacy rate. They had a history of past glory. How could they allow for the rise of Hitler? Same thing with Italy. Right? How can this happen? Let's talk about it. The number one reason that totalitarianism occurs is something simple. It's primal, it's very natural, it's fear. And what can happen is if people are afraid, they will do almost anything that they can to get rid of that fear. For instance, if you've ever been, let's think back when you were really young and you got lost in the mall or something like that. Or you were walking around the woods, you're like, oh my goodness, where's my mommy? That's who you think about. You think about your mommy. All right? Now, if I'm in trouble, I'm not going to yell for my mommy, but I might look for the police or some other type of authority figure. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's completely natural. Actually, I'm going to look to my wife because she's pretty smart and brave. But here's the deal. If people are afraid, they're going to look to authority to protect them. Very, very simple. And it can be something like an imminent attack, like our neighbor is really nasty or something like that. It could be a perceived threat. It may not even exist. That works. The other thing is often there's a they. They are going to do this to you if we don't do X or something like that. And the they, that is something evil and scary, A politician or a totalitarian person who wants to gain power is going to use the fear of whoever it is. And it can be a fear that is cultural, something based on history. It could be a fear of something new. It could be like a fear of terrorism, for instance, or something like that. Or the fear of some type of a horrific pandemic. I mean, that could happen also. It's not going to. All right, so often this will lead to something called scapegoating. And you basically blame someone else for all of your problems. And that's stage one, because what can happen after you start scapegoating people is you start passing laws against them and things like that. It's part of the process. Another interesting aspect of totalitarianism and its rise is pride. Now, pride doesn't have to be anything negative. For instance, we're all proud of like teams that we are members of. There's nothing wrong with that. We have school pride. That's really cool. We have pride for later on the university that we attend, or something to that effect. Nothing wrong with that, completely cool. What happens is if you take it too far, for instance, if you take patriotism, which is a good thing, and you tie in like ultra patriotism, like super patriotism, and you mix in a little bit of racism, then you get something called nationalism. Nationalism isn't a term that we use that much anymore. There's nothing wrong with being a patriot. Being a nationalist is different. It means I really love my country. My country's super awesome, still okay. But boy, do I hate you, and you over there, boy, do I want to see you extremely dead, or something like that. It goes too far. The Nazis were nationalists, just to give you an idea, okay? So, pride can do that. This is going to lead to ethnocentrism. You think that you're better than everyone else. And eventually this can also lead to laws that protect your people because you like you more than anybody else, and laws that exclude other people or other people's ideas. In the past, you've seen things like the burning of books that don't follow a certain ideology or something like that. Laws that exclude people, stopping people from crossing borders, forcing different groups of people to wear something that indicates who they are, or forcing people to carry identification papers or something like that when other people don't. Basically, you make rules that help your people and hinder others. Right? You might even take away the nationality of groups of people that you don't like. They're no longer a member of your country. Another thing that happens is something called hopelessness. If you can't feed your family, if you don't have a job, if you don't have shelter, this can lead you to look towards something you normally wouldn't look toward. And this is a big deal. When a group of people become hopeless, that's when they start to look to anything that will offer them structure, anything that will offer them protection, anything that will offer them sustenance. And sometimes people can play on those because it plays on fear. It can play on people's pride. It's scary at that point. Next, the totalitarian leader lets people believe that they are their only hope. That's it. Right? This creates a cult of personality. The entire country becomes intermeshed with that one individual. That person becomes the nation. That person not only represents the nation, but that person is the nation. And so that's why we can think of Nazi Germany, you think of Hitler. You think of fascist Italy, you think of Mussolini. Things like that. Whenever I think of the Soviet Union, I think of Stalin. And that's just a very natural thing. Then I go through a list of German. Yeah, I'm going to have to edit that. Soviet generals and things like that. That's how my brain works. But when a person can convince you that they are their only hope, you can get them to do almost anything. Because what happens is someone will sit back and say, hey, I don't like what X is doing, but boy, I have a job. Or I don't like what X is doing, but at least I have food on the table. Or, hey, I don't like what X is doing, but he makes the trains run on time. Or, I don't like what X is doing, but he created the Autobahn. All right, see what I'm saying? And this is where you have to be afraid of this stuff. Because once a totalitarian dictator has you believing that they are your only hope, you will give away all of your rights willingly to these people because they've offered you protection. They've offered you security. And this you have to be very, very, very afraid of. Most important thing I want to tell you right now is this can be stopped. And the way that you can stop totalitarianism is extremely easy, but it's proven to be difficult to implement. The easy idea is, look at the end of our Constitution. There's this thing called the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights means we're not going to ever have this. Right? That's the most important thing. It starts with a free press and freedom of speech. With the free press and the freedom of speech, you do not get dictators. Can't happen. And so that is why we always, always have to protect those rights. If we have a free press, we will have a free people. Please feel free to take a look at the U.S. Constitution, read it, take a look at the Bill of Rights, understand it. It's really important that you know your rights. Thank you very much, and I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope you've learned something. Hey, stay safe, stay healthy.